the one, the only, Ben Sion. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the first lecture on a new book we're doing, and Ideally Speaking, 10 Really Dumb Mistakes That Very Smart Couples Make, a Torah-based guide to a successful marriage by Rabbi Ben Sion Schaefer. I wrote this book, you know that? It was me. My name is Ben Sion, and my last name is Schaefer. Now, the truth is, my last name is Lang, but it really used to be Schaefer, believe it or not. Going back 4 generations, my my great grandfather was his real name was Schaefer, but he worked in a bank in Hungary. He had a very good job in a bank in Hungary, and they didn't like the fact of a non-Jewish bank, and they didn't like the fact that he had a Jewish-sounding name, Schaefer. So they told him to change the name. So he changed the name to Lang. So really, my name is really Sion Schaefer. So it's really fitting for me to give commentary on the other Ben Sion Schaefer, who is famously known for the Shmooze. See it here, the shmooze.com on top. I'm not advocating for this. He's not paying me to read this book or to advocate for his website. He's someone, I guess, sort of known in the Jewish world. He gives a shmooze. He gives, Musar shmooze that's apparently really relevant and practical for many people on many different topics. But he's especially known, or now he's becoming more known for his keen insight into marriage and solving marital problems in couples. And he finally put this book out after many years. Today will be the introduction to it. As he starts off, my introduction to the institution of marriage. How did I become a marriage guru? Man, Sion Schaefer is going to tell you why he is qualified to give such pertinent and meaningful and correct advice as he will give in this book. I am a Talmud of the Chavetz Chaim Yeshiva, and I was a high school rebbe for 15 years. About 20 years ago, the Rosh Yeshiva of Henoch Leibowitz Zatzal asked me to start a program for young working men. These were fellows who had been in yeshiva. Some had learned a tremendous amount, and others hadn't learned much, who now found themselves in the workplace. The Rosh Yeshiva felt that there was no support for them, no groups, no organizations. Some didn't even belong to a shul. That's how the Shmooze, right, his umbrella organization, began. The Shmooze is a cross between an old-fashioned Musar Shmooze, an inspirational seminar, and an advanced science class. He has interesting science facts, all focused on a Torah perspective on life. We started in Brooklyn and expanded to Queens, and pretty soon the Muncie group was formed. I would travel in and give a Musar Shmooze once a week. In short order, we expanded by adding morning calls, night programs, social events, and grew into a beautiful program. As we grew, my role remained the same, to give the shmooze. But a funny thing happened. The shmooze always addressed real-life issues and concepts that we're all supposed to know, but somehow don't pay much attention to. Because the shmooze was so relevant, many of the chevra who attended connected to me personally as their rebbe. I became their go-to for all serious life issues. In the early years, most of these young men were single, and the questions they asked were innocent enough. But as time went on, many of them got married. In the initial stage of marriage, their questions were still pretty innocuous. How to deal with a mother-in-law, or what to do when you have a difference of opinion with your wife. But as time went on, the questions became more complex. I had fellows who reported they were experiencing a lot of squabbling, quarreling, and outright fighting. I found myself spending more and more time counseling couples. But here was the problem. I didn't know what to say. At this point, I had been happily married for about 15 years. So listen to the a little bit of a paradox over here. Here was the problem. I didn't know what to say. At this point, I've been happily married for about 15 years. Okay, so this guy, Rabbi Schaefer, has been married for 15 years, happily married for 15 years. Okay, how did you get to that point that you've been happily married for 15 years? Obviously, you've worked on your marriage. You've done something. Most marriages, after a year or two, grow stale, and they're very difficult to continue. So how is it that he's been married for 15 years and he didn't know anything to say to answer these questions? What? And listen to what he says now. I had been learning Musar for decades. My rabbi had taught me a lot about the inner workings of a person and the trappings of human personality. I felt well equipped to deal with most of the questions that were brought to me, but questions about marriage were different. It was rare there was just one spouse who had a problem, that he was selfish, she was spoiled. Usually they were both great people with fine meals. If you were to meet either of them, you'd say, wow, they'll make a great husband or wife. But when these two amusing people got married, something was going wrong. The question was why, and more importantly, what to do about it. I would love to say that I davened sincerely and a sudden stroke of inspiration hit me. How about just thinking about the 15 years of your marriage, how you worked at all those squabbles with your wife? If you didn't have any fights with your wife, were you really married? That's not exactly what happened. It always gets me. They say a story of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that at the funeral of his wife, he said, I don't have to ask Mechila. The minimum people is to ask Mechila from the person. If they were close to the person, they asked them for forgiveness. He said, I don't have to ask forgiveness of my wife. I never did anything. We never got into a fight, he said, basically. I never got into a fight. Okay. I mean, come on. This is a gadol. Rosh Shlomo Zalman is a gadol. We give him the respect that we should give him for being a gadol. But at the same time, anyone who's been married, if you don't get into a fight, that means there's no marriage. That means, it's like you don't get into a fight with the coyotes in the woods. You're right. Because you inhabit different territory, right? The coyotes come out at night, right? They come out in the woods. They're not coming, usually they don't come into your backyard or to your house. It's like the animals in the forest, they go in the forest. They come out at night. They each inhabit different territories. So usually if you were to come in contact with them, there would be some sort of standoff. But if you're each manning your own grounds, so there's nothing to fight about. That's what I think of life of most Gedolim is that, there's nothing to fight about because they just said, like I've heard from many people, they say, this is the key to marriage. You say to the wife, the Gashmias decisions are your decision. The spiritual decisions are my decision. The man. That's basically the life of Gedolim. They don't care about the Gashmias. They don't care. There's nothing to fight over. What are you going to fight over at the Gashmias? They don't spend any money. They don't care. They don't spend money for themselves. They don't care about the Gashmias. The Gashmias doesn't mean anything. You can serve them, tuna fish for every meal the rest of life. They'd be happy. Maybe it'll be too much taiva. I don't know, but it's irrelevant to them. The spiritual matters. Okay, so the women are like, okay, so you paskin the shilas. You're a rabbi. You paskin the shilas. Great. They don't invade each other's territory. But at the end of the day, that's not a marriage. And a marriage involves two individuals. And when a man is a man and he wants things for himself, you're only a man if you have needs and wants that are in the physical realm. Otherwise, you just a spiritual being. You're just a brain. You're just, you're not a person. A person has more than a head. Most of a person is his body. How much of the height of a person is his head? The body is, at least 4/5 or 5/6 of a person's height. So how big is it? Your head is a small fraction of you. If you don't have a body, you're not a person. You're not a head. There's kares, it's creases. So, unfortunately, those people that don't worry about their bodies, it's a very sad thing. But when you have a body and you worry about your body, and you should worry about, as a husband, I'm going to say this many times, you come first in a marriage. Number 1 is the husband, number 2 is the wife, number 3 is the kids. That's the truth. You have to worry about yourself first. You're the king. She's your queen. You're the king. You got to treat her as a queen, but you got to be a king, right? You shouldn't be a servant to treat the queen. You're not like a bee, right? There's a queen bee and there's the drones. No, you're the king. You want to be a king. You got to act like a king, and you got to be better in the physical world than a woman. And that's the hardest possible thing in the world. If you want to be a successful man, right? And a woman should be attracted to you and like you and respect you, because if they like you, they'll respect you. If they don't like you, they're not going to respect you. And it's very hard for a man to earn the love of a woman. And the way to earn the love of a woman is to be someone, basically an alpha male. That's what you gotta be. It's very hard to be that. But you have to be someone who is confident, is cool, is strong, strongly opinionated, and is fair, and has, his own opinions about things, his own desires. He wants things for himself. He knows who he is. He knows what he wants. He speaks down to a woman, not in a mean way, but, in a flirtatious way. You don't speak to a woman like she's your friend, your best friend. That's not the way you speak to a woman. You joke around with the woman. Obviously, you treat her with respect. That's not to say you don't treat her with respect, but in order to command the attention of a woman, you got to be flirtatious with her. So all these things we'll talk about going through the book. This is my definition of what attracts a woman. I think it's universal. They accept it. It's not going to talk much about it in the book, but again, half of these lectures are what he says, and half is what I'm going to add in. So again, you have to be a real man to attract a woman and to earn her respect. And then we could talk about getting into problems. So when he says that he's been married 15 years, but he doesn't know anything about marriage, I say, okay, you're right. He's giving a schmooze. He's telling you Musar over here, but he's never really been married because he doesn't worry about his physical self. Anyway, he continues to say that I would love to say, but I took couples to marriage therapists, to couples therapy, to psychology. Nothing helped. In fact, many relationships went from bad to worse. We lost a number of those initial couples. Their marriages failed. And it also meant that I had failed. They looked to me for answers and I had none. They looked at me as their guide to leading a Torah life, and I didn't know what to say. I began doing whatever I could to study and understand the institution of marriage. I read Sfarim that dealt with marriage. I read secular books. Pretty much every popular, well-known secular marriage book. I began consulting with chassan teachers and kal teachers and rabbanim. After a while, I started to see patterns. I started to see different things. Not all the advice I gave in those early years was brilliant. Some things worked, some things didn't. But slowly I was putting the pieces together. And after many years and counseling many couples, I think I have an understanding of what marriage needs, how to develop marriage, how to identify the issues that are challenging a couple, and how to address them. That's what I present to you here, a system for creating a successful marriage. We'll start with a basic understanding of the nature of a relationship. Then we'll explore the perspectives and tools to create a vibrant, loving marriage. Okay, so that's the aim of this book, is to tell you how to improve your marriage, how to, for beginners who are newly married, how to have a good marriage. If your marriage is falling apart, how to restore the order. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to divide this intro into two parts, because he does say a lot over here in this chapter, and I want to actually read part of what he says. He talks about, he gives how many reasons? 4 reasons why marriages fail. He said in the 1900s, the early 1900s, the divorce rate in America was about 6%. Now the divorce rate in America is about 50%. He says obviously in the Frum community it's much lower. I don't know the exact statistics. I would say the Frum community is about 20%, which is pretty high. But he wants to speak about why it is that so many marriages fail nowadays. What happened from 100 years ago? So he has 4 reasons over here. Number 1 is everything is disposable. There's a stigma of getting divorced, peer pressure to stay married. It's ugly when people get divorced. When people get divorced, you get thrown out of society, whatever community you're not going to talk to anymore. So it's not something, most people don't want to get divorced because of stigma, also because you have children, it's going to make your life more difficult. That's one reason. He talks about everything, people being interested only in themselves. We talk about people being, people having very extreme luxuries and material possessions, and people just naively believe that everything will work out easy. I want to get into that more in introduction part 2, and I'll divide it into 2 parts. What I will say is that we just finished the last book that I did in Ideally Speaking. It's a new way umbrella term for the Musar Shmuzin. We finished a book about marital intimacy. So I'm going from marital intimacy to a book which really doesn't discuss marital intimacy. It discusses all the other parts of marriage besides the bedroom, how to fix those problems. And apparently, according to the author, that's completely the key to Shalom Bayis. I mentioned at the end of the last book that I believe, I heard from my Rebbe, he quoted the name of Shalom Zalman Auerbach, he said 95% of marriage is in the bedroom, is decided in the bedroom. And I believe that's true. I've been married for almost 6 years, 5.5 years. I know this is a fact. I know this is true. What I wasn't told is why that is. And after going through the long book about marital intimacy, where I had a little bit different view than the author, you'll have to listen to that series to see where I differ with the author. But I will say that it's really divided into 2 parts. Marital intimacy, half of the problem, if there's problems with marital intimacy, half of that half causes problems. That causes 50% of marriages to fail, because couples are not happy sexually. They're not happy sexually with what goes on, so they're not satisfied, and they can't communicate it with the other spouse. That's the most important thing in marriage, because that's why you get married, right? And the second point, the other 50% of the bedroom is, even if people somehow their needs, both spouses' needs are taken care of in the bedroom, but there's awkwardness in the bedroom, right? If there's awkwardness in the bedroom, there's awkwardness in the entire marriage. Of course, it's very awkward in the bedroom, but if couples are not comfortable 100% with each other in the bedroom, that will spill over to the rest of their marriage outside the bedroom, and they won't communicate properly. So it's not because their needs are not being met in the bedroom. It's because they're awkward in the bedroom, so they can't communicate well. They don't have a good enough relationship to communicate about other topics, including finances, raising children, spending time together, different idiosyncrasies that bother them about each other. So they can't communicate their problems well with each other or even to a marriage therapist. So that leads to the problems. And the other 2% of marriage, that occurs, so those two are 49% each. And the other 2% of marriage is basically what he talks about in this book, which the author believes that 100% of the marriage is due to these stupid things. I'll call them stupid, trivial things, like the fact that the husband's leaving his jacket on the chair and the wife doesn't like that, or the wife shows up late, or the wife spends too much money, or things like that, or the wife insults the husband, or the husband is not emotionally connected to his wife. So these are all things that he attributes to the destruction of a marriage. 100%. I believe 2% of the marriage. If everything is 100% in the bedroom, so 98% of your marriage is good. So there's only 2% chance their marriage will fall apart if you're completely terrible in the rest of your marriage, um, because probably because you just don't care about each other. You're a person that doesn't care, um, for whatever reason. Either spouse doesn't care about the other one. If they don't care about it, and it's hard to, if they're doing everything right in the bedroom, it means they care about each other. But they're just stupid, or they're or they're very insensitive. So maybe you can crumble a marriage. But as I mentioned, I think this book is really unnecessary. The reason I'm doing this book, um, is because this is something that people can relate to. No one wants to, it's a stigma to even give the lectures. I gave 39 lectures on a book, that everyone's reading. Everyone who goes into the Judaica store, they read it. They make sure no one's looking at them. I had it here in the base medrash over here. People took it out, read it, read it on Shabbos, make sure no one's looking and stuff like that. Everyone's interested in that. Everyone wants to know about that. Because there's no information about it. No one shares information about that. So everyone wants to know about that, but they're too embarrassed to talk about it, and maybe too embarrassed. I don't know if people didn't listen to more of the lectures. I mean, it's probably very interesting to listen to. I would want to listen to it. So it's just can't be talked about. So I realize no one wants to talk about that. So to try to get people to uh, on common playing ground, and I'm able to talk to people something that's relevant to them that they can relate to and they will feel comfortable talking about. That's why I decided to give on this book. It's only 16 chapters. We'll try to do it, I don't know, twice a week. I usually give, ideally speaking, lectures, and hope you come along for the ride. And I think you'll be shocked by a lot of things I say. You'll be shocked by a lot of things the author says and a lot of things that I say. And if you haven't listened to me at all, I have over close to 3,200 videos out there. A lot of them are Yeshiva YouTube, a lot of them. If you never heard me speak or my opinions before, you'll probably be shocked by a lot of them. And I don't do it for shock value. I do it because it's really my opinions. I'm a disruptor, they say in the industry. So you're gonna want to check out most of the stuff I say. So hopefully you'll enjoy. We'll get more introduction part 2 coming up next week. See you then.